See, here's the thing, you see. Our testimony comes with eyewitness testimony that goes back to the time of the Prophet by witnesses who they watched it, and we have chains of narration that goes back to the time. So what we believe as Muslims is more verifiable than Christopher Columbus or anything else you got in history.
Well, not exactly.
100%.
This chain that these Muslims are claiming is broken and it's all over the place, and it's fabricated, okay, and it's made up. Then you have a valid argument. Brother Alex, come on, you're just so pathetic. Honestly, Alex, come on.
But I want to hear it. I want to hear the nonsense. I want to hear the nonsense.
I know we have reduced you to the level where all you can come out with is just silly points.
No, you just talk stupid.
Well, they go away.
No. I already danced this dance with Alex. I want to see what's changed in 5 years' time.
I like Alex. Alex is a nice guy.
Yeah.
Alex is a nice guy.
I put a lot of thought on that one, you know.
Well, nice is subjective.
Brother Alex, look, all I would say to you is this. We're not talking about empiricism here. We're not talking about absolutes. We're talking about through reasonable contemplation and evaluation.
That's right.
Is it far more likely that this is true to this is true, right?
Well, I don't think either of them are very likely.
Well, that's all I'm saying to you, Alex, right?
Yeah.
So to go down the route of, well, the satanic verses doesn't prove anything, quite frankly.
Well, I think
no, Alex, it doesn't, because look.
Why are satanic verses?
Well,
why can't they look after their
Alex, look,
documents?
What I'm trying to say to you is that if you can demonstrate reasonably that this book, claiming to be a miracle, is indeed something outside of the capacity of human human construction, then for a reasonable person, Alex, that would be enough to accept that at the very least it requires a further investigation, or if one is convinced that, you know what, this is probably true, this has probably come from where it claims to be from, which is the Almighty Creator.
That's right,
I'm asking you just to be reasonable.
Well, I'm trying to be reasonable.
I understand, but what I'm trying to say to you also is that our whole life and what we believe and how we feel and what we think is based upon, generally speaking, valid, trustable testimony. I'll tell you why. You may not have done a DNA test, right? But you may be fairly convinced that that's my father and that's my mother. I am very convinced that that's my father and that's my mother. I don't have analytical or empirical evidence to provide other than maybe a few photographs that could have been doctored, okay, that could have been just made up, right? Or some relatives who told me, yes, I remember you when you were a little boy, you were very naughty, which probably sounds like me, right?
Me too, yeah.
But the point is, Alex, you see, that why am I so convinced? Why am I so grounded in that belief without empiricism? It's because to believe the alternative, to me anyway, from everything that I know and everything that I've heard, okay, would be absurd.
Well, are we still talking about your mother now? Are we
talking about what? I'm talking about my mother being my mother and my father being my father.
Fine.
Now, do I believe Christopher Columbus found his way to America? Yes, I do.
He didn't, but no.
Well, I believe it. Now, why do I believe it? I believe that because there's lots of historians and lots of, let's say, people who said that he did.
Why don't you believe
on balance of probability...
Because he never did. He didn't get to Northern America.
He never got there.
He never got there.
We've got his manuals.
People wrote it down. His manuals exist.
Yeah. Right, and you believe they're true?
To a certain degree.
Why?
I don't think that Columbus would go out of the way to fake his documents in order to make it look as though he failed to get to where he was going to.
No, but look,
how do you know he wrote it?
But he's right. Either way, whether he did or he didn't, whether he wrote in his journal that actually, you know what, guys, I never actually got there, but I just lied, I made the whole thing up, right?
No, well, he didn't do it like that.
No, but here's the thing about it. No, this is a double standard, you see. You're trying to hold us to a standard you don't hold yourselves to.
But that's what I'm trying to say to you. But you accept that. that.
Well, I don't. That's what we've been telling.
Why do you believe Christopher Columbus wrote it?
You accept that he didn't get there.
Come on, you've had a little bit of a big mouth in this conversation. Why do you believe it?
We have the list of where he did go. This is what he did.
Why do you think Christopher Columbus wrote it?
Here.
Alex, why do you think Christopher Columbus wrote it?
Well, we know what his handwriting looks like.
How do you know it wasn't forged?
Well, who is this person who goes around forging his
whoever? How do you know it's
Mr. Whoever? Well, thank you. That was very good. That was good.
See, here's the thing. You see, our testimony comes with eyewitness testimony that goes back to the time of the Prophet by witnesses who they watched it. And we have chains of narration that goes back to the time. So, what we believe as Muslims is more verifiable than Christopher Columbus or anything else you got in history.
Well, not exactly.
100%.
Exactly.
Name one thing you've got more verifiable.
You're talking now about the hadith.
I'm sorry, mate?
Hadith.
You're going this way, there's no history.
Yes.
There's no history.
If you believe what they're believing, you say you have to deny everything.
No, they do. They have to give up history. If they're trying to hold us to a standard.
Let me explain to you one of the principles. Let me explain to you one of the rules of
unless it's your narrative.
Okay. So what the early compilers of hadith did. So for example, Bukhari, he received, I think it was 300,000 hadith. Out of 300,000, he selected, I think 2,500.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, now why? I'll tell you why. It wasn't because they were necessarily untrue or untrustable, but his criteria was so stringent, that even if there was the most smallest of minutiae of doubt, he discarded it.
So you have a man here with a remarkable ability to do this.
Yes.
That is exactly the sort of thing that we're saying came through Muhammad. There were people around with magnificent abilities to remember to put in particular ways. Exactly. No, I understood too well.
Maybe I didn't explain properly. So, for example, let's say there is a person that comes to Bukhari and says, I heard from such and such, who heard from his teacher,
that's right,
who sat with the Prophet ﷺ, and he said this.
Yes.
Okay.
Have you read these?
No, please, yes, I have.
Right,
Let me just explain to you now.
Good.
Now, what he would do, he wouldn't simply take that and say, okay, fair enough, it goes down in the book. He wouldn't do that. So he looked at many different factors. Number one would have been multiple chains of the same narration that may have ended up in different parts of the world that have almost identical wording to that wording. Number two, he would test each and every person in the chain. Were they ever a liar? Did they ever sin openly? Did they ever do something that was breaking of trust or bond? Okay. Where did they study? Who were these people? What were their families like? What did the people say about them? What was their memory like? So, for example, some of the scholars would take hadith from a particular individual from the first 30 years of their life. And in the latter 30 years of their life or 50 years of their life, they would say that we wouldn't take the hadith because we know that possibly his memory was a little bit weak. So what we have...
Why are you flipping?
Quranic verses.
Well, be careful with it then, isn't it? Don't
So what we have, Alex, is we have a science that was established very, very early on. Now, what Hamza's trying to explain to you is that many of the things that in modern times we believe, we haven't gone through that verification process, yet we accept them. So all we're saying to you, brother Alex and sister, sorry, I don't know your name, is that if we're going to be fair, we have to be consistent. So if we find certain things convincing on much lesser evidence, then when we find much greater evidence on something else, it's but reasonable to accept that.
You have read the Bukhari?
Not all of Bukhari, but I have read many hadith in Bukhari, yes.
Okay. Honestly, do you know one of the pieces, which is talking about the emperor of the Byzantines?
Yes.
And he's interrogating some of the pagan Muslims to pagan Arabs to say, what is this fellow Muhammad like? And he's trying to get information from them.
So this was when Abu Sufyan, not Abu Sufyan, sorry, it was one of the other Sahabi who went to the Byzantine courts to get the I beg your pardon. It was Abu Sufyan. Abu Sufyan. It was Abu Sufyan. It was Abu Sufyan. Jazakallah khair, brother. So Abu Sufyan, at that time, he was regarded as a noble enemy to the Muslims.
Yeah.
Okay. So Caesar asks him about this man Muhammad.
Caesar, Heracles.
Heracles. I beg your pardon.
Well, Caesar is the title of
Yeah.
Yes.
So he asks him, did this man, I think, ever lie?
Yeah, that's right.
And Abu Sufyan says, no.
That's right. Yeah. This is the one I'm talking about.
Does he come from a noble family? He says he comes from the most noble families.
That's right, yes.
And then he asks him one or two other questions.
Do the poor follow him or the rich?
That's right. This is the same one, yeah.
Abu Sufyan admitted later when he became Muslim, had it not been for the people that were standing behind me, I would have lied. But because in Arabic culture, to be known as a liar was something that was deplorable, he said, I was forced to tell the truth. That this man, he has never lied. That the poor are attracted to him more than the rich. He comes from the noblest of families. And Heracles was convinced, in fact.
And exactly. Now we're getting to the really interesting bit.
He was convinced.
Because where are the chain of 5 people passing this on?
Honestly.
There is nobody at all. There is nobody at all who comes forward and says that they are the last person to do this.
Abu Sufyan was the witness himself. Abu Sufyan later becomes Muslim. On the conquest of Mecca.
When you look at this, you see, as you did, A, B, C, D, and at the end, it should say who told so-and-so, who told Buhari or somebody. There's nothing like that.
No, brother.
No, it doesn't work that way.
No, of course it doesn't work that way. It works in all the other ones, but it doesn't work in that
here's the
one.
thing, you see, it doesn't work with any of them that way. It's usually like a isnad of 4 going back to the Prophet.
Well, you haven't read it then.
No.
I haven't read it.
Well, obviously, if you
Oh, show me the hadith that goes from now back to the Prophet.
No, brother Alex.
Show me one hadith that does that.
Yeah, I think there are some.
There are some that they do.
Yeah, there are some.
But brother Alex, the point here is this. The point here is this. Abu Sufyan himself narrated the hadith that this is what happened.
This is the story, yes. And then what you need at the end of it, the person who verifies it, and you haven't got it.
No, brother, you completely missed.
That's the whole point.
You completely missed the point.
You have to miss the point.
Brother, you really do miss the point, and let me explain to you why. Look, first of all, even this discussion about hadith is nonsensical.
Well, of course, they are. Yes, they are. I agree with that. I agree with that.
No, I'm not saying he's.
There's Kitten, isn't there, who has all these stories about kittens that he's found. Wonderful stuff. Wonderful stuff. Oh, yes, the flies in the rubbish as well. Yes. Lots of them.
So what's the fly with that?
Well, you're supposed to swipe it on one side and then you can eat it. Yeah, but nobody wants to do it. It's funny that, isn't it?
Do you believe the Prophet said that?
Well, if we doubt that, then we just might as well tear it all up. Just tear it up.
Do you believe the Prophet said that? Do you believe the Prophet said that?
I don't believe.
You don't believe that?
Why should I believe anything?
Well, you believe history, though. You believe Christopher Columbus wrote that letter.
Well, some of it is less silly than others.
Yeah, there are bits in the Bukhari that are not as silly as the.
Well, you've done a verification process.
And it's actually in the Bukhari.
Have you studied the letters of? 1 second. Have you studied the letters of Christopher Columbus? I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised.
Okay, so the point here is.
You can't answer it.
I did answer.
No, you didn't. Have you studied the letter of Christopher Columbus? Have you studied his handwriting? And have you compared it to the letter? Or you just believe in someone's testimony?
Or is it that you don't know how to consider?
Well, you're the one who said it. You're the one who said we know his handwriting. How do you know his handwriting? How do you know his handwriting?
Oh, do you want to know, or is that to shout me down so that I won't be able to tell you?
No, I'm asking you the question.
Oh, fine. Okay. Well, there have these places where they have the remains of what people had, the things they had on their hands and things like that. Well, some of the things that they have are the actual writing of this person.
Right.
And you can actually bring in an expert to say, oh, yeah, that's Muhammad, that's so-and-so's writing.
Right.
So we can do it, yes.
But could they be forged?
It would be very, very difficult.
Could it be forged?
Well,
It'd be difficult to do what? Forge Christopher Columbus's handwriting?
No.
What language did he speak?
You didn't let me finish.
What language did he speak writing?
This is the sort of nonsense that you get in when you try to shout somebody down by not listening to what they say, not letting them finish what they're saying. Right. It would be difficult to understand why anyone should have conned people over the writing of him. Presumably they would have to go out throughout Spain finding different places where he wrote and fooling people on that one as well, and on another one.
Was he
another
Italian?
one.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Asif.
I thought Prince Columbus was Italian.
That's a very good point, Alex.
Why would you go to Spain?
No, Hamza, he made a very good point. He made an excellent point.
What was it? Yeah,
it was a beautiful point. He's right, and he's right. He's right. To assume that somebody would have gone around forging this stuff, kept it a secret, nobody would uncover the secret, and that it would have just completely gone unrecorded is absurd, and I would accept Alex's opinion on that. But that's exactly what we do to the hadith.
Well, no, it's not quite what you do with the hadith, because, for example, we know...
Exactly what we do to the hadith.
No. Well, okay. We know in the case of the discoveries of the Americas, we know where these people went. We know the documents that they wrote.
Brother Alex, my brother,
double standards. It's always double standards.
It's double standards, but completely inability.
Alex, we know at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the companions. Yes. We know who they were, who their wives were, who their children. Hold on a second, Alex, who their children were. Yes. We know who they taught, who their students were. Yes. We have isnad today. We have chains of narration. For example, for the Quran, where Brother Hamza may have ijazah, he may have a recognized certificate that recognizes his authenticated teaching from his scholar, which is authenticated by his scholar, who they were, where they studied, who their we know everything right the way back up to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
One of these was Aisha.
Let me just finish. Now, the beauty about that and the complexity about that.
What's he just brought Aisha to the situation for that? Well, I know what he's going to do.
No, Brother Alex, that's why, Alex. Now, what happens, Alex, is this sister may have learned, for example, in Finland, let's say, and she gets ijazah of the Quran. You, after converting, mashallah, you become a memorizer of the Quran, but you decided to do it in Basingstoke. Yes, I don't know why Basingstoke, but that's the first thing that came to mind. Yes, Basingstoke. Alhamdulillah, I'm blessed, and I decide to go to Egypt. Okay, and I learn it there. Yes,
wonderful. Yeah.
And then my teacher and his teacher and his teacher. You know what the beautiful thing about the isnad is that upon the chain, 10 generations up, maybe 11 generations up, maybe 9 generations up, many of our scholars meet at a certain point, and it strengthens that isnad. And now when you duplicate that over and over again through this cross-referencing, you realize that if there were errors, that you would never get that isnad following and joining in the right places.
So
right?
if we did get those, that would be proof that Islam was not good.
No, what it would prove to you, what it would, if you got, of course, if you found that in fact this chain that these Muslims are claiming is broken and it's all over the place, and it's fabricated, okay, and it's made up, then you have a valid argument. Brother Alex, come on.
It's just so pathetic, honestly.
Alex, come on.
But I want to hear it. I want to hear the nonsense. I want to hear the nonsense.
I know we have reduced you to the level where all you can come out with is just silly points.
Well, you just talk stupid.
Well, they go away.
No.
Well, you must be stupid.
I'm here to expose your stupidity.
Well, you're not doing very well. You're not doing well, are you? You really are not doing well.
I know what you're talking about.
You're not doing well.
I've done a good job, haven't I? That's all it is.
I like both of them.
She's been snidey the whole way along. Sniping.
Well, there's a lot of targets. Oh, there's a lot of targets. There's a lot of targets you give them. Don't you? Particularly you, actually. I think you're really good at it.
Well, isn't he trying to be a better Muslim?
Okay, Alex.
Say it again, sorry.
He's trying to be a better Muslim by being nice.
When you can't answer a question, you start saying that he's shouting you down.
Okay, well, let's do that.
If you can't answer the question, it's your fault, isn't it?
Okay, but I know, but let's not get upset with one another.
They do it all the time. Yeah, they do it all the time.
Let's have a nice discussion.
We
have our testimony.
Emphatically.
And you're stuck with it. And you're stuck with it. Yes.
You may disagree with what I believe, okay?
Stuck with it on nothing.
I may disagree with what you believe.
Yeah.
But you know what? We're all members of humanity. We have a right to believe whatever we want to believe. And Allah says very clearly in the Quran, there is no compulsion in religion.
Exactly.
Okay? So there is no compulsion. You don't have to accept it. You know, if my arguments are not convincing, then it's maybe more of an indication of the weakness of my ability to convey the message rather than the message itself, right?
By
so
me.
now, Alex, what I'm saying to you is this, right?
Oh, that's really bad. You forgot the ignorance of the audience.
Anyway, what I'm saying to you, Alex, is this: like, if we're consistent, the things that we accept through reason. And you mentioned, Alex, that it would be absurd for somebody to go around and do those things, and it would all be a secret, and nobody would ever find out. And in the same way, what we're asking you, Alex, is that apply the same measure to the Quran, to the Hadith,
and what I do,
to Islam,
and what I do when I do that. I say first of all, right. Let's take two cases. Let's take one of them is Columbus, and the other is Muhammad.
Yes.
And I see no reason whatsoever for anyone to invent all this stuff about Columbus.
Right.
But in the case of Hadith, it's obvious, because if you have somebody who is trying to make it, so to speak, as a prophet, he has a great incentive to fiddle the things around a bit. So when I do exactly what you say, and I compare and say, is there a reason for this? No. Is there a reason for that? Yes.
Okay, so I think, Alex, you're not being fair here, and I'll tell you why you're not being fair. What are the possible reasons people may have lied about Christopher Columbus discovering America? It could be European, elitism, that we Europeans are going out where we're discovering the world, right? That's a possibility.
Not really, since he was one himself.
Well, what I'm trying to say to you, what I'm trying to say to you is that there was this notion of the white man traveling to these primitive, native, archaic, old-fashioned, backward, savages, and we're discovering these new worlds, and we're changing the whole world according to our paradigm, which is the superior white European paradigm. So now I've given you a possible reason as to why people might have made up those stories about Christopher Columbus. Now, is that an unreasonable claim to make?
Yes, it is, actually.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Yeah. Because the people who would be doing this would be the people who would be exonerating Columbus, saying what a great guy he was.
Well, you just said he didn't discover America.
That's right. Yeah. Hey, you've been listening. Only for 1 minute, and you got confused, and you've gone back to sleep again. No, that's okay. That's okay. We'll wake you up. We will wake you up after.
This is based upon the letter that apparently demonstrates that he wrote himself that he didn't discover America. Is that right?
No, it's not. But you got terribly confused.
Okay,
I'll give you a class afterwards.
The young lady here said Christopher Columbus didn't discover America. And I said, how do we know this? And she said, we have letters written by him saying he didn't.
No,
so what do you mean, no, you didn't?
I didn't say letters.
No, she didn't say that.
It's on camera, you said it.
Yeah, it's wrong. Don't worry about it. You've been wrong so often.
I said many stupid things, just one of them, don't worry.
This is no, just a minute. We've just had an example of Islamic honour when addressing a woman. Yes, beautiful. Would you like to stone her to death as well?
I don't differentiate.
Oh, well, maybe
it's not sexist, is it?
Have a bit of stoning somebody to death before you finish it. Anyway, can we get back to the sensible end? Yeah, right, okay. The people who would have been writing about that would have been exonerating. But the point is that the evidence that we have is not to exonerate him, but to say he failed. So he's doing exactly the opposite of what you would have needed.
Is there a lot of evidence to exonerate him?
Both places.
There's it depends on what. We know that he did go to the West Indies, but he never went to Cuba or...
Are there people that exonerate him?
Well, exonerate him in what?
Say that he discovered America.
Well, no, they don't say that these days. No.
So there's nobody that says that.
Well, there might be somebody, but they're a bit ignorant because they don't know anything about what the Vikings did.
Alex, the point here is...
Is that really right?
When we evaluate something,
he didn't discover America.
It's true. I accept what you're saying, that we have to look at the motive
and we know he wrote in
of the individuals that have given us that information.
So then someone could forge that to take away the
So if you said to me, look, there could be Muslim bias that says that all this stuff agrees, but they managed to through mass collusion, they managed to hide all the difficulties, let's say, and they kept all the good bits, and now that's all they're presenting. But what you would have to then do, Alex, is then you'd have to look at, for example, people who are not Muslim, like Angelica Newith, people who are discovering the oldest manuscripts that we have, like the Birmingham Folio, which is potentially at the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So non-Muslims who are now saying that far from the Quran, for example, not being preserved, and this question of multiple readings, and the evidence is now showing, and the debate, the discussion about preservation is over. Angelica Newith, German, linguist. She's a professor and one of the most foremost experts on Quranic manuscripts.
Well, what I do with that...
Let me just finish, please, Alex. I'm sorry, I do tend to go on a bit. Excuse me, right? No, it's just how I think. Now, what you would then do, Alex, is you would say, okay, well, I didn't know that's very interesting, Abbas. I didn't know that. Let me go back and look at Angelica Newith's arguments. Let me look at her works. Maybe what Abbas has said to me was actually true.
But what I would also do to make it nice and balanced was to take into account the large number of people who are leaving Islam and going off, some of them to be Christians, some of them to be atheists, all sorts of things.
How does that go?
Of course, this makes it it's a bit difficult for them because in some places you might get murdered for doing it. But in more easy places to live in, yeah, of course there are.
Alex,
of course, in this country, there's a lot of them. You must have seen
Alex,
that.
And what about all the people becoming Muslims? Alex, what about all the people becoming Muslims? See, here's what I find amazing about this particular argument. Yeah?
Yes.
Islam is painted as a religion of misogyny. One second, Abbas.
But he likes to play
Abbas.
Can you actually throw up
just deal with what you said. No, you know this idea about Muslims leaving.
And then decide which one of them is going to try and shout me down.
No, we're not shouting. Come on, Alex. Let's be fair. I haven't shouted you down.
No, but you do it by not deliberately, but by the fact that you've got 5 other people moving in as well.
But Abbas, I need to deal with this nonsense you just said. I need to deal with this nonsense because it's complete nonsense.
Of course it is.
I can't.
No Muslim has left Islam.
So Alex has made a claim, Muslims leave Islam, and that proves Islam is false. Okay.
No, I didn't say that. Well,
never mind. What does it mean then? Muslims leaving Islam?
It's actually a nice thing the way you said it because you know very well that I didn't say that. So you've run out of things that you could possibly have any hope of managing to take on what I said. So you went off and had a little
So here's the problem.
Excuse me.
No, one second. Abbas, 1 second. No, I'm dealing with this. I'm not going to stop.
Brother, what it is that somebody leaving or...
I'm going to deal with it. Let me just deal with it now. No, I'm going to deal with it now.
I'll be nice to him.
It's not for him.
I don't care whether
it's not for him. It's not for him. Okay.
It shows what Islam is like.
You give a beautiful...
Me behaving badly.
Honestly.
Your behaviour is the one.
No, you're not very good at behaving badly, but he is absolutely perfect.
Yeah. I'll never compete with a limelight.
Me behaving well or badly is not a reflection on what Islam is. That's a reflection on me.
Yeah, but there's a connection.
Okay, Abbas, here's the problem.
But the connection only is this.
Abbas is all over it.
The connection only is
Abbas.
if I follow the teaching. If I don't follow the teaching and I act badly, then I'm a bad person.
Abbas, stop falling for these.
But anyway, look.
I'm going to say it.
But say it nicely.
Hamza said one thing and he's used it as a child.
Honestly, right. But here's the problem. Here's what happened, right? He said I misunderstood what he was saying, right? You give a beautiful thing about Angela Newith, who's an expert studying the Quran, and she's concluded the argument of preservation's over. You said he should go away and research what she's done and then come back and determine whether what you're saying is right or not. His response was, people leaving Islam is what? All right. So let's make things easy.
No, not people is what? People leaving Islam because they don't like it, because they've seen through it, because they can see what's wrong with it, because they've been in arguments like this and have come away realising that these people could only shout.
You're shouting as you say it.
Yeah, you actually need something to put on your head. Many things actually, but you may understand that if you've got one person on one side and about 10 on the other.
No. Here's the thing about
this.
Here's the thing
about the person who is on one side has to speak rather more loudly than the other one. Otherwise, he isn't going to be heard.
Anyway,
so that was the simple answer to that one. Right.
Islam is painted as a religion of misogyny, a religion of intolerance, a religion of terrorism. You must be a madman if you want to be a Muslim, right? So people leaving Islam, like her, right, should be expected. She might not. I think so. That's got a slimy look. Anyway, people leaving Islam from someone who thinks that is the perspective of Islam, you wouldn't be surprised.
No, because they've lived all their early years in it. Yes, so you would expect that, wouldn't you? Yes, because they've seen through it.
The thing is this, you see, this is what we would expect to see people leaving.
A lot of them will. lot of them.
People
Perhaps
leaving
you
Islam.
yourself have made it a tradition.
We should expect to see that.
Help it.
But guess what?
Have helped
But
people
guess
to
what?
go away
But guess what?
by looking and saying, this is Islam.
Guess what?
Yeah, let's be
but
Buddhist.
Here's the thing, Alex, you see.
Yes.
If that was
How
true.
many of
But
those
what
people do you know?
One second.
People who came to Islam, and the 1% maybe
relax.
Oh, really?
So why are you focusing on the...
So here's the thing,
Well, because he's focusing on one side, you see.
No,
so
no,
I'm
no, no,
focusing
no,
on the
no,
other side.
no,
no.
And he's saying, well, look at these people who've joined. And I'm saying, well, look at these people who've gone away.
Right, so
That's
but
a
you would
bit
expect,
fair,
well, you
isn't
should
it?
expect that,
Fair,
shouldn't you?
fair, yes.
Just 1 second, Alex.
Yes.
There are people today
Yes.
who argue that vaccines are dangerous
Yes.
and they won't take them.
Yes.
There are others who say you're stupid, you need to take them,
Exactly.
otherwise you're going to die.
Exactly, they do, yes.
One of these two are right.
Not necessarily. It could be that some are right in some situations and others right in others. Oh, I'm sorry, I was being intelligent. I'm sorry,
Either the vaccines are harmful or they're
You
not
sure about
harmful.
that?
Right? Either they are harmful or they're not harmful.
No,
One of
no,
the two.
it's a bit more complicated than that.
Alex,
Because some of them could be okay for certain people with certain chemistry, and other people could be
All right,
the
Alex,
opposite.
let's say vitamin C, Alex.
Vitamin C, yes.
Vitamin C is either good to take or good to have in your body on the right dosage, right?
Right, dosage.
Or it is bad to have.
Or both.
Alex, one of these two claims is probably correct, yes? Now, the
depends
point
on the
is
situation.
that
It
you
is
will find
complicated. Not
people,
very,
Alex,
but a bit.
you will find people who will argue till they go blue in the face, maybe because they haven't taken their vitamin C, that vitamin C is actually bad for you. Okay? Now the point, Alex, is this. You will find people with all sorts of deviances and opinions, and often it's based upon their own intellect, understanding, and capacity to evaluate the evidence. Now, my own experience, Alex, of people who have left Islam,
Yes.
when I ask them the very fundamental, basic questions and concepts about Islam, they don't know them.
But I know some of them know it very well indeed.
Now, the point, no, they might do. There might be a handful of people, and I would say, in my experience, it has been less than a handful. Now, who might know a little bit more about Islam. However, to say that because they've left, that you extrapolate some...
Exactly, and you don't do it either way. That's the point.
No, but I tell you what you should do. I'll tell you what you should do. You should say, okay, so Islam is the fastest growing religion in the West.
Yes,
Interestingly,
and you know
the
what?
Baha'is say that about themselves.
Yes. No, it's because you get killed if you're not. Easy as that.
Anybody could say, I am the fastest growing religion.
Just relax. Really?
Yeah.
No, hold on a second.
Oh, they walked
I
into
haven't
that
made
one.
my point. I have just started.
They walked into that one.
I haven't made my point. I've just started.
Yeah.
So you would say, okay, well, there could be lots of reasons why that might be happening, right? Okay. So then what you do, objectively and sensibly, you say, well, okay, let me find out why these people came into Islam. So what does the Moray poll or the Gallup poll who've done the studies, what does it show? Well, what it does show is that the average age tends to be around 27. It shows that 72% of them are women. It shows that on average they're postgraduate level educated. And it shows that on average they spent 7 years studying comparative religion. Okay? So now if you're humble and you're honest, you would have to say that, you know what, they seem to be fairly educated, fairly successful, and they've actually studied comparative religion, and then despite living in a Western society, being able to explore all of the freedoms that the West, the liberal West, allows them and affords them to have, yet they've gone and chosen Islam. So that is very counterintuitive.